this scene we're gonna look this lesson we're focusing on the fool, and he's probably the closest person left to Lear. Lear has exiled his dearest daughter Cordelia. He's sent away Kent, but Kent at the beginning of 1-4 disguises himself to stay near Lear and accosts Lear and says he wants to work for him, and Lear agrees, and Kent remains in this costume of Caius till the end of the play, to be near Lear, to protect him. That further kind of elaborates how loyal and how close Kent is to him. The fool is someone who's very very dear to Lear, and he's been missing for 3 days, and Lear's been calling for him, and he's been away. It's said because he misses Cordelia so much, and that's one indication of the tight emotional bound of these characters, and the way the fools protested what Lear's done, and again the way different characters protest openly or through their actions to power is a subtle but continuous theme through the play. The fool is a comedian. The convention is a kind of clown. And what is worthwhile looking at with the fool is the role of the fool within the court was someone who could say things that no one else would be allowed to say in the court. Goneril, whose house we're in now, Lear and his 100 Knights, the disguised Kent, his fool, all of them are at Goneril's house. And Peter Brook's legendary version of this play really highlighted what a mess they'd made of Goneril's house. I mean, traditionally Goneril is just seen as really cruel and mean for rejecting Lear, but in the modern era, probably in the, a very modern interpretation, it gives much more sympathy to Goneril. And that's something we'll be exploring in the next lesson. But this fool is this, and she calls the fool this all-licensed fool, this all-permitting. You give him no limits. And it's worth thinking about that, because the things the fool says to Lear, the kind of harsh jokes, the mockery he makes of Lear, is really worth paying attention to. What's also worthy to note for the fool is the way he speaks in riddles, puns, games, rhymes, his songs. He sings throughout the play, and Lear says, you were never so full of songs before, and it makes me think that perhaps he didn't sing as much before, and now singing is a new thing he does. But nonetheless, that's what a fool would do. They'd entertain. But their language, the mysterious, silly, yet profound way that they speak, the truth that they speak, the way they challenge authority, all of this is encapsulated in this character, the fool. So I've edited down the scene just to look at some parts of this first interaction of his entry onto stage. So Lear's been calling for him. He finally shows up. How now, my pretty knave, my pretty fool, foolish knave. Why, this fellow has banished 2 on's daughters, and did a third a blessing against his will. If thou follow him, thou must needs wear my coxcomb. So coxcomb is a kind of rooster hat that was associated with the fool. And there's a lot of costume cues. How now, nuncle, would I had 2 coxcombs and 2 daughters. Now right away, he says what probably no one else could mention. He mocks the king. He calls the king a fool. He also calls him nuncle, like an uncle, suggesting their intimacy and also almost a family relationship. But he talks about him banishing and how that banishing makes him a fool. Right off the bat. Why, my boy? He says, if I gave them all my living, I did keep my coxcombs myself. There's mine. Beg another of thy daughters. He's mocking him. He's mocking him for giving everything away. Okay? His register is comic, low, strange. Almost, we could add, we can think, is the fool mad? Is he crazy? And is his truth coming from this moment of craziness? I don't think so. I think he's way too knowing. But nonetheless, there's something about his language and the way he communicates that will remind us of some characters later on in the play. Take heed, sirrah, the whip. He threatens him. But I think this is in a playful way. Truth's a dog must to kennel. He must be whipped out when Lady the Brack may stand by the fire and stink. So, truth is being personified as a dog. Truth is a dog, the metaphor, and he's got to go away. He'll come back later, I guess. But I guess the fool's also saying, okay, well, if you don't want me to tell the truth, it'll come back. Don't worry. A pestilent gall to me. You know what? I'm going to teach you a speech. Do. So speeches, songs, set pieces. Have more than thou showest. Speak less than thou knowest. Lend less than thou owest. Ride more than thou goest. Learn more than thou trowest. Set less than thou throwest. Leave thy drink and thy whore, and keep and adore, and thou shalt have more than 2 tens to a score. The rhymes are heavy. There's almost contradictory language, contradictory nonsense language. Kent, in the guise of Caius, says, "This is nothing, fool. This doesn't mean anything. There's that word again. Oh, if it's nothing, then it's the breath of an unfeed lawyer. Unpaid. It's the breath of an unpaid lawyer. You gave me nothing for it. So since you didn't pay me for it, it's like, it's the same." And then he sets King Lear up for a big stumble. Can you make no use of nothing? Can you make no use of nothing? Double negative, too. Can't you use anything? Why? No, boy. Schofield again, the stumbling into this line I love. Nothing can be made of nothing. Lear repeats this line. Remember, he says this line to Cordelia. And now it sounds so... The echo again of this line is so horrific, so comic, so pathetic. It was his advice to Cordelia. Look, I can't give you anything if you say nothing. Nothing will come of nothing. Again, it could be the subtitle of the play. And Lear stumbles across that same moment. Prithee, tell him, so much the rent of his land comes to. He will not believe a fool. Look, tell him, he's not going to believe me, but his land comes to 0. Nothing. He's worth nothing, and now it's coming back to him. A bitter fool! You're being mean. You're not being funny. You're being bitter. Do you know the difference, my boy, between a bitter fool and a sweet fool? Do you know the difference between bitter and sweet? No, lad, teach me. That Lord that counselled thee to give away thy land, come place him here by me. Do thou for him stand. The sweet and bitter fool will presently appear, the one in Montley here, the other found out there. He calls over the fool. He calls over the fool who told him to give away his land. Mocks him for giving his land away. Says, look, are you calling me a fool? And look how he stitches him up. All thy other titles thou hast given away, that thou wast born with. And then comes Kent's great line. This is not altogether fool, my lord. He isn't just speaking rubbish. Not altogether fool. It's not all of what he's saying isn't foolish. Thou hadst little wit in thy bald crown when thou gavest thy golden one away. You had little brains in your head when you gave your golden crown away. If I speak like myself in this, let him be whipped that first finds it so. Fools had ne'er less wit in a year, for wise men are grown foppish. That's the third time, maybe. They know not how their wits to wear, their manners are so apish. Wow, I didn't know that you sang. When were you so full of songs? I used it, nuncle, ever since thou madest thy daughters thy mothers. It's a comic, harsh truth. You've let these daughters become your mothers. For when thou givest them the rod, and putst down thine own breeches, then they for sudden joy did weep, and I for sorrow sung, that such a king should play bo peep, and go the fools among. Prithee, nuncle, keep a schoolmaster that can teach thy fool to lie. I would fain learn to lie. So there's a little change in tone before I go into that. I think here he's suggesting the king is feminized. You know, in the maze of the fool's language, you have to figure out what's being said, but there are all sorts of suggestions as well. And he wants to learn to lie. Oh, wait. If you lie, we'll have you whipped. There's that play threat, you know, like you do with kids. And you know, that's, I think, the way they treat, the king treats the fool as his child. His hidden son, maybe, perhaps. So, if you lie, we'll tell the truth. Well, I marvel what king thou and thy daughters are. I'm amazed you're related to your daughters. They'll have me whipped for speaking true. Thou'll have me whipped for lying. And sometimes I'm whipped for holding my peace. Pun. Holding my peace is being quiet. I think it could also be holding his, genitals, his peace. I had rather be any kind of thing than a fool, and yet I would not be thee, nuncle. Thou hast pared, split thy wit on both sides, and left nothing in the middle. Here comes one of the pairings. I'd rather be anything than what I am, a fool, but I wouldn't be you. So you're not even a fool. You're something else. You've given away everything. You are nothing. And it's harsh. It's harsh. That later in this scene, when Lear gets very upset with Goneril because she cannot stand the rabble-rousing he's doing in the house, Lear gets very upset and he says, do you recognize me? Is this Lear? Who am I? Are these Lear's eyes? Does Lear walk like this? And the fool jumps in and says, I know who you are. You're Lear's shadow. And that's dark. And that's the kind of loving, harsh tone that comes from the fool throughout this play. It changes later on the heath, but I think that this perhaps is the truth that Kent was trying to get at, but he couldn't hear, and it's only the fool that can really get away with it. So all of 1-4 is really important for the conflict with Goneril, but the introduction of the fool is crucial to deal with in terms of the language, the humor, the way it's played on stage, the convention of the fool, and the fool's role in the play overall.